I decided about a year ago almost to actually take very cold showers every day as a way to not only derive those benefits from good stressors to the body because it really energizes you, but also as a way to handle my discipline, my willpower, just to strengthen the ability to face unexpected hard situations.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 20. And surprise, it's not about what I said it would be. I'll explain, but first, I'm your host, Jennie O'Connor, and I write and create courses about mastering your mindset so you can stop settling for less, start asking for more, and finally do the thing that scares you. You know, like taking a leap by leaving a job that's soul-sucking to start an online business doing something you truly love. Exactly the kinds of things we talk about on this show. If you are already subscribed, you make me so happy. And if you are just tuning in for the first time, do be sure to hit subscribe because next week I'll be bringing you the episode I promised to bring you today, for realsies. I switched it up though because I'm in the middle of a two-parter about lifestyle design for multi-potentialites. And in the course of researching these two episodes, I discovered that there are two very different types of multi-passionate people. There's the cyclical type, which I discuss in episode 19, and which has described everyone I have interviewed on this show to date. And then there are sequential everything enthusiasts, which I had never even met until today, you guys. I am so excited to bring you this conversation with Jorge Giraldo because he is like me and probably you in so many ways, and yet he's got a very different approach to his pursuit of all the things. I'm not even going to introduce him except to say that he is currently a certified coactive coach because to run down his CV makes me literally breathless. We're just gonna dive right on in, so hold on tight, y'all. Hi, Jorge. How are you doing today?
Great, Jennie. Great to be here.
Excellent. I am so happy to have you on and to be talking to you in person finally. I actually want to give the audience some background for a minute. So Jorge and I are I don't really know how to describe the conspiracy. It's sort of a mastermind / get her done cohort. It's basically a group of people who have come together to work towards a worthy goal. But this is our first time actually talking in person. And basically, I was just poking around Circle one day, reading the welcome thread, and I happened upon Jorge's bio. And I just want to read you guys a snippet from it real quick. So this is what he said. I am a learning fanatic who has turned this endless curiosity into multiple occupations. Molecular biologist, professional photographer, software developer and architect, IT consultant, entrepreneur, technology sales rep, people manager, sales director, and now coach. I'm also a father and husband, an avid reader, a world traveler, an offshore sailor, a backpacker, scuba diver, mountain biker, chess player, Buddhist and yogi, nutrition dilettante, trader, and writer. I'm literally out of breath. I just immediately knew I had found one of my people when I read this, you guys. So I reached out to Jorge and I said, I know you don't know me from Adam, but you must be a guest on my show. So here we are. So I just want to thank you for being here. This is really exciting and we've got lots to dig into. So I guess my first question for you, Jorge, has to be, have you always embraced this love of so many things, or did you experience at any point in your life some resistance, whether that was from the voices in your head or from outside influences?
Well, I'd say when I was young, pretty much all I remember is being in love with science and wanting to be a scientist, a famous scientist. Okay. So I was very focused on science and becoming a biologist specifically. I would do experiments at home. I would, open frogs and all these crazy things.
You would open frogs at home?
Yeah, just to see. I would give them some anesthesia. I would give them some anesthesia and open them and then close them back up and then let them go.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. but when I went to college and throughout, all my life, I love to read a bunch of stuff. But I went to college to study molecular biology. In the first week of school, I had something inside me that said, wait, you're signing up to study molecular biology. All these courses, are super focused on this. This is what you have always wanted to do. But look at over there, all those humanities courses that are so interesting. And that first week, I signed up for a minor in comparative literature at the same time, just to balance, just to not be deep down in only science. And I couldn't even focus on a single language. It had to be comparative literature. So I already wanted to do French and Spanish and Asian and English. So immediately, as I started in college, I realized that I had many interests and that in order to be happy and fulfilled, I had to pursue more than one thing. Yeah.
So that didn't happen though until you went to college.
In a very practical way, yeah, that's when I first really had to make a deliberate decision to not focus on a single thing.
Interesting. I wonder if just because you were in school and studying all these different subjects, when we're young, that's what we do in school. Like maybe you were getting that need fulfilled without even sort of realizing it. And then when you had to pick one thing, you were like, I'm not going to pick one thing. I'm going to pick several things. And I love that even your minor involves several things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are an everything enthusiast through and through. That's fantastic. And you wrote to me that your wife is a bit of an everything enthusiast, right?
Yeah, she studied law, and at the same time, she was always an artist. And when you graduate from law here, you write a thesis. And she refused to write the standard research thesis that everybody writes. And she actually did an illustrated history of Roman law, which was criticized by the old school teachers, right? It was like, this is a cartoon, but it was so good that actually students used it later on to study and prepare for exams in Roman law. So it was super good and solid. And eventually she became a children's books author and illustrator, as it just moved away from law. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, what an interesting approach to a thesis, and how funny. I mean, and it totally makes sense to me that people would way rather read that, or use that as a guide for them because it's probably just easier to take in than pages and pages of text. So, So it must help then that you understand each other.
Without any doubt.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's not like, why are you off on another thing, Jorge? She gets it.
Yeah, she does get it. And we all both read from a ton of different subjects. That we feed off of all of those multiple interests.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I think that must help so much. I mean, I sometimes wonder if it is a struggle for people who, and I just spoke to another guy that I interviewed who said that his relationship didn't work out because he's a nonlinear thinker and she was a linear thinker. And I can see how that could cause conflict. So good that you managed to find someone who totally understands you. I think that's wonderful. Yeah. So I have been the most excited about having you on today because I literally just wrapped an episode about what I'm calling sequential everything enthusiasts, which so far none of my guests have been. And it basically means like everyone else I've brought on has done multiple projects concurrently. And you've described your style as focusing like deeply on one thing for years at a time, and then making like a complete 180. So tell me how that's looked on a couple. I mean, you've had, a long career. So what has that entailed exactly?
Yeah, for example, I'm I'm kind of a perfectionist, and I'm also competitive, and I love being a high achiever, and I think everything I do well, or I try to do it well. So, and I love learning, love studying. So, for example, when I realized that in order to be a scientist, I needed to get a PhD, which meant at least 5 to 7 years of deep focus on a very, very tiny area of knowledge, I realized that I could never be a scientist because I was not prepared to spend that much time on such a, on a very tiny um, area of study. So I looked at all of my interests and identified photography and art and creativity as one of those things that gave me energy. So I decided to study photography, but I wanted to do it well. So I went to school for commercial photography to really, really master it. And then I went to work on professionally for about, I would say, 9 years approximately,
Wow.
where I actually spent a lot of time developing a career in photography, getting to work with the best agencies, and really become a well-known photographer here in Colombia, where I was after I moved back from the United States. And towards the end of that time, it began to get a little bit jaded. It began to, and helped by the rising of digital photography and interactive media and the internet. So all those little things started coming up, and I said, I began to be interested by all of that, and the boredom or the getting used to the work of 8 years, plus all these new things that were coming up, kind of began to open up a new field. And with my wife, we decided this is so interesting. We need to really dig deep down, and went back to the United States and studied interactive media, digital photography, web programming, computer programming, and to understand what was all that about. And got deep into it. And I said, forget photography. This is just too interested, and did the turnaround, got a job in programming, and switched from the world of photography to the world of technology. So that's just one example of how one thing turned into another. And then I went deep down into programming and worked for several years doing first web development and then Java programming.
Wow. See, I don't see that as related to photography at all.
No.
Yeah, I mean, you say there was this like evolution where like one thing kind of led to the other.
Digital aspect of photography actually got me back into computers, got me into computers, and there was the shift.
And that's that nonlinear mind of yours connecting dots in a way that maybe somebody else wouldn't. So that does make sense on one hand. Do you think that it's like when you master something, that's when the time comes to kind of leave that thing?
Yeah, I would say that has happened, and either I master or I sense a lack of something. So when I was doing technology, I did it for several years. I actually created a startup in technology consulting, and it didn't do too well. And I realized that it was because I didn't know how to sell.
Okay.
I was comfortable programming and dealing with the technical challenges that involved in the company, but I wasn't going out to find new clients. And without new clients, you can't just grow the company. Yeah. So I realized that I had a huge gap there. And when an opportunity showed up to get into technology sales, I just jumped right in, closed the company, forgot all of that after almost 8 years or so. Again, another cycle, and went into technology sales with an American company without knowing anything about it.
Wow.
Completely scared, but it worked. And I then I didn't go to school, but I worked on the job, and then had the opportunity to really become really good at that. And so that was another transition point where there was a gap, a big gap that I wanted to fill.
So you must really thrive on that, like, scary feeling. Like you dove in without knowing anything about it.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I just threw myself in there.
Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting because I fear of the unknown holds a lot of people in, creative endeavors back. But for you, it sounds like it's almost an impetus to like, this is a challenge and I accept it, And so I think that's really cool that if something is unknown to you, that makes it something you kind of want to conquer, which I just love the idea of that.
Yeah, it's that and the learning opportunity.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That makes sense. So when you go on to something new, do you just kind of leave the past life behind? You're done with it.
It seems like, I would say that I'm done with it, because sometimes my daughters ask me, why don't you take any more photographs? I mean, I take a few, but I don't really do it as much, or I don't do any programming, or I don't read much about biology anymore. I do leave it behind and jump deep down in the new field. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. This is so exciting because you're the definition of this other kind of multi-potentialite that I just hadn't met yet. So this is so cool. So, okay. Even though you're diving really deeply into one particular topic, you always have like side pursuits. I mean, that's the only way you could accomplish all of these hobbies too. Does that ever contribute to you finding the next big shift? Like a hobby turns into more than a hobby, or are those always just like a way to let off steam?
I think they're a way of just exploring other things without the time, the investment, the long-term investment. So among those, but now that you ask, I see some patterns. For example, I love scuba diving, right? But I couldn't stay at just learning to scuba dive like many people. I needed to become a dive master. So that meant a rigorous program of study that ended up, granting me the dive master level, whatever. I love to sail. So I learned to sail, but that wasn't enough. So I actually have gone through, a bunch of courses to really allow me to get to learn it deeply. And I got, my certificate for bareboating, and for, I have like some formal training that allows me to really feel that I have mastered the subject. But those are hobbies. So yeah, I guess I take that into a much shorter cycles of learning.
Okay.
That just are feeding my interest for other things.
Yeah.
At a personal level.
Yeah. That's so interesting though, because it's more like for so many of us, learning is the thing, our what creates momentum for us. But for you, it's learning definitely, but it's also the mastery. It sounds like almost everything that you've pursued, you're like, I need to know more. I need to go deep into this. And so like for me, sometimes cursory knowledge is enough, like I know enough about this where I could have an intelligent conversation and then I move on to something else. But for you, it's like, I'm getting the certification. Like I'm becoming the dive master. Wow. So that's actually a perfect lead in to my next question. Your worthy goal in the conspiracy, that group that we're in together, is to write a book about overwhelm. Is that because that's a problem that you have faced yourself?
Not necessarily myself, but I certainly have been around a lot of overwhelmed people.
Okay.
My last 15 years or so, I've been in the technology world with multinational companies. And the last 10 years were at Google. These are companies that are all about growth, about continuous innovation, about continuous forward movement, pressure, do more, do more, do more, create more, grow, grow, grow. And overwhelm is ever present. Everybody's just working, 12-hour days and weekends, and it's all about really being immersed in work. And a lot of people complain about not having personal life. I, in that world, managed to have some balance for some reason. But I tended to always support those around me, both as a regular employee and as a manager, as a people manager, to support those around me to deal with that, which led me to what I do now, which is coaching. And overwhelm was almost always present as a cause of unfulfillment, of frustration, of burnout. It's always there. So now that I'm in the coaching world and these overwhelmed people continue to show up in my life, I decided that maybe it was time to think about that deeply and maybe write a book about it. So that's the worthy goal. And it's a worthy goal because I've never written a book and it's overwhelming by itself.
Sure.
And so that's why this structure is great for me to take that endeavor.
Yeah, I'm so, I mean, obviously you would make a great coach if you haven't experienced it yourself, but I'm also like mind boggled that you do all of these things and haven't experienced it yourself. I mean, I even just reading off your list of things you've done is overwhelming to me.
Well, that's the advantage of the long-term thinking, right?
I guess so. But so, all right, if you face this with, your colleagues in the past and your clients now, what do you have like a best tip? Like, give me one of your juiciest tips for handling it. Because I think a lot of multi-passionate people are plagued by overwhelm.
Yeah. And in both in the long term and in the short term, I think what I'm finding out is that a lot of people don't have a clear definition of success or what success means for them. And the problem is that when you don't have clarity about what success means for you, you take on other people's definitions of success. And this is at the career level and also at the, daily life level, at the work level in the short term. For example, in the corporate world, after so many years, I should be, by outside standards, I should be a vice president of something, right?
Yep.
And I'm not. I was never there. I did not make vice president. Why? Because I started way late in the career path of the corporate world and corporate ladder. But my definition of success has nothing to do with a title or becoming a vice president in this linear ladder. My definition of success had more to do with exploring different things and learning about different things and trying to have a better balance between my work and my personal life and my family. So by actually having clarity about what success means to you, you get to pick areas of focus. And by focusing on less things and knowing where to let go of some others, then you can avoid overwhelm. Overwhelm comes from trying to juggle too many balls on the air at the same time. But if you actually know which ones to let go of for a while, at least for a while, and just focus on one or two, everything just flows more naturally. And that's what I'm learning. I knew, and looking back at my life and my work life, um, everybody tried to take on everything at the same time with equal priorities, and felt bad about letting some of those balls drop off. I felt fine. I felt absolutely fine to be able to focus on fewer things, and knowing that all the other ones that I was not, facing directly or engaging with directly, were going to be fine anyway. And that's like the biggest insight that I have right now. Just learn to let go of some things.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm envious that you seem to understand. It sounds like for maybe ever your whole life that your version of success didn't have to look like anybody else's. Because for me, I like just figured that out. And I wish that I had known that a long time ago. Because that's exactly the point. You can let go on that looming to-do list of all of the things that aren't important to you once you figure out what is important to you. And that just scales that list down so drastically. I think that's a great tip for managing overwhelm, for sure. Yeah. All right. You're an expert on this. This is good stuff. On the topic of overwhelm and just picking, a couple things, you mentioned Gary Keller's book, The One Thing. And I read it like a million years ago, but I had a problem with it because the book's title is The One Thing, but then he advises you to pick one thing in all of the aspects of your life. So one thing for your health, one thing for your career, one thing for your relationships. And that left me with like a bunch of things. And I had like gone looking for the one thing. So honestly, my own impression of it was that it wasn't particularly helpful. And I wonder if revisiting it now, so many years later, I'd be able to get some new insights out of it. But you mentioned that one of your kind of superpowers is helping people bring focus to their one thing. How do you zero in on that? Like for other people, how do you get them clear on their one thing?
It's all about giving them or getting them to clarity about the landscape in which they're in. Usually, again, if you think about overwhelm, it's just a bunch of things going on at the same time. And when you're in the midst of the storm, you have no clarity about really, you lose clarity if you had it even, about what is this all about? Where do you want to be? Where do you want to get to? And just by asking smart questions, or deep questions, and just digging through all of that, you can get to fundamentals. And usually, at least in the short term, getting to that one thing that you need to do or to get done or to drive towards is what gets you out of that big storm. And so, although I do many things, or I have done many things in my life, in a shorter period of time, the one thing serves me quite a bit. When I need to achieve something in the shorter term, medium term, just focusing deeply and trying to focus deeply helps me and helps others, and helped my team when I was at Google to really move forward, to have clarity about what to leave behind and what to focus on. So the difference, for me in the book, is that I applied in the shorter term. I applied to the storm, if we speak on sailing terms, to that particular storm in which you're in. But for my whole life, no, of course I cannot.
Right. I mean, I've heard it said that like balance is kind of a lie. You're always focused more on one thing, but if you can correct then later. Like you don't want to spend 4 years just focused on your career and sacrifice your family. So it's kind of always this like this dance of the one thing this month is over here, and then next month I'm going to go back and make my one thing my family or whatever. And so would you say you've kind of had to learn how to juggle those things a little bit?
Yes, and just keep in mind, balance does not mean equal weight on each side of the balance.
Okay.
Balance can be in balance with one side being heavier than the other one, but still be at balance.
Okay.
So the other thing there is that at some points in my life, my family is more important than my work. And at some stages in my life, my work seems to be more important than my family. And I think the key to that balance is to know where you are, what you want to achieve, and what is the proper weighing of the different elements of your life.
Okay. Yeah. And just sort of keeping that in the forefront of your mind so that you don't become that, workaholic who's divorced and doesn't talk to his kids anymore, Yeah. Yeah. I think that's also a critical component of making all of that work, but that does make sense. So let's switch gears for a second here. I want to talk about some of your hobbies because that's a long list too. One that jumped out at me from your list was cold showers. Can you explain that?
Yeah. I was always, how would I say? I was always the last one to jump into a cold pool. If I did jump into a cold pool, I was, the worst with cold water. And a few years ago, I learned, I think, from Tony Robbins that he jumps into freezing water every day just to get, all his lymphatic system working, and it's healthy. And I thought, that sounds great, but I'm, a coward. I could never do that. And then one time after a long hike, a 5-day hike in the backwoods of somewhere in the United States. At the end of that, in the summer, we jumped into an alpine lake, and it was such an energizing experience. And it was almost, the water was almost freezing. It was just melted ice, and it was beautiful, a beautiful experience. And I said, wow, there is something about this cold water. It's possible. And then, I said, all right, it is possible. I can love it. It's definitely energizing. And then later on, I learned or I read a book by the Iceman. Right now, his name escapes me, but he's all about being exposed to cold. And he's climbed Mount Kilimanjaro on just shorts and no shirt. And he takes people, and there is some training about cold exposure and some benefits. So I read his books. And then, I decided about a year ago almost to actually take very cold showers every day as a way to not only derive those benefits from good stressors to the body, because it really energizes you, but also as a way to handle my discipline, my willpower, just to strengthen the ability to face unexpected hard situations. So every day, still with some fear or reluctancy, I just switch to the freezing water, which is always shocking. You do get kind of used to it, but still you get that jolt. And it's just a daily exercise that I have, a daily contact with the unexpected, with hardship, with just a little bit of discipline. And it's been super useful.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done it. I went to a workshop one time. And the last day we were told to take a freezing cold shower for 2 minutes. and then come back and report like whether we did it for the whole time. And I remember him saying, how you did this task is how you approach life, like how willing you are to embrace something difficult or something painful. If you did it for the full 2 minutes, like you're a go-getter. And if you cheated, that's something to think about. Like, how badly do you want the thing that you're going for? And I did it for the full 2 minutes. And I had the same experience as you, where I was like, holy cow, this is so invigorating. And I never would have done it without having been pushed to do it. But I have to say that I love that. I was like, how is that a hobby, Jorge? And then as I'm listening to you, like, and then I read books about it. And then like, you made it a hobby, like that, a daily pursuit. And that's awesome. So, but yeah, thank you. I had to inquire about that. That's pretty cool. What would you say right at the moment is the hobby that has your heart the most?
The one that I want to engage with, and I haven't because I don't have the tools or the space, is woodworking. I love to sail, and one of my ideas is to eventually build a sailboat, even if it's a tiny one, a little one. But actually, wooden boats are complex. They are challenging to build, and but they're beautiful too. It's a craft, and so I think that's something I've been reading up on it. I'm looking at possible workshops to take, and I've been trying to do some woodworking, basic stuff like tables and things, but my sights are already aimed at building a boat sometime in the future.
Oh, that is really cool. I seriously think you need to put on like a show that is like your body of work, like at some point, in your late years, because I would come to that show. I mean, there'd be a boat, there'd be like a whole story about all of your cold showers. Like that would be such an interesting thing. What a cool thing to pursue, to make a sailboat. I love it. So when your interests, like you have said, your interests come and go, does that apply to hobbies too?
Yeah. I would say so. Yeah.
So some disappear, never to be heard from again.
But they do. For example, it's been about probably, let's guess, 10 years since I have done scuba diving. Not on purpose. It's just, it happens that I have not, for whatever reason, had the chance to do it. I live in the mountains right now, so the ocean is not really close to me. But other things have, showed up, and pursued other interests. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going to scuba dive anymore. It just hasn't happened. So yeah, things happen in cycles. I do get deep into something and then move on to other things.
It's not necessarily choosing to leave something behind. It's just literally not having space for it at the moment.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would imagine with all these different interests that like time management is a thing for you. You mentioned that you used to be a Google employee. You're no longer employed with Google. So that must be giving you quite a bit of time freedom. And I think you said that could be a little bit dangerous for somebody, for people like us. How are you handling that? Like, is the freedom problematic?
The freedom is problematic in the sense that the floodgates are open, right? Now I can pursue all my interests at the same time.
Fun.
And in that sense, I decided to give myself some structure, and partly because I want my next stage to be about coaching, which in itself is a great opportunity to explore different things, because there's many different styles of coaching. Every person is a whole world, so it's a great way to to explore different types of people and interests and challenges. But at the same time, I'm mindful of the dangers of being the owner of my own time. So I began to give structure to my week, and I'm setting aside certain times for certain types of work, exploration, writing, building the coaching business. And without that structure, I probably would be just going to a million places and really going nowhere. And right now I am going somewhere, and that somewhere right now is building a coaching business.
Yeah, I think that the idea, especially if you're artistically inclined, of working for yourself is that like you can go where the inspiration pulls you. And that is not, I don't think, what works best for most of us. I think structure is kind of critical. So are you like chunking out time blocks? Like, this will be time that I work on coaching. This will be time that I allow myself to research boat building. Is that how you do it?
Yeah, for example, I decided to give Mondays and Fridays, they are time block. Fridays are for writing, Mondays are for business building, weekends are for exploration of whatever interests I may have in my personal life. Tuesdays to Thursdays are about clients and coaching. So at least that's a rough way to do it. And I think time blocking at the day level is easier for me, just because I know that on Mondays building a business can be marketing, can be research, can be a million things. So that's for Mondays, and I can focus on my clients Tuesdays to Thursdays, and then Fridays are for writing, which means it's a way to go off and research and look at other interests and play around, and that has been working for me so far.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people have success with doing it by the day rather than like taking the day and then breaking it down into chunks that way, which is something I've tried to do. I have not found a system that is foolproof yet. So that's why I love picking people's brains about this stuff. So what else? I had another question for you and it absolutely just left my brain. Okay. So clearly you're not a person who engages in a lot of time wasting activities. So I'm including like binge watching Netflix or social media. Do you just completely avoid all of that stuff?
I think I recall like twice in my life to have done some binge watching. Maybe, yeah, about 2 times. So I don't watch any TV. I do watch movies. I don't watch ever TV series or anything like that. Maybe I've watched 2 series, maybe 2, 3, maybe at the most. I remember Game of Thrones, and I skipped a few episodes just to get to the end.
That's worth watching all the way
I
through.
think I actually skipped the whole season, maybe.
What? How did you know?
Yeah.
And still watched the end though without that season?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Jorge.
But I did it only after everybody, after the season was over, so I could control my time.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see what you mean.
But no, I don't. Social media, LinkedIn, when I remember to go to LinkedIn, which is part of work in a way. But other than that, no, not really. No.
I figured it had to be something like that, to get as much done as you have accomplished in your life. There's got to be something else that's been sacrificed. And I think for so many of us, there's this not even realizing that we've spent 4 hours in front of the TV every single day. And that's time that could be used, much more effectively in a pursuit of something that actually is fulfilling. So that's good. That's, I think, a good piece of advice for my listeners to hear as well. I want to touch on real quick. You said there's different kinds of coaching. What do you fall into a particular niche, or how would you describe your style?
Actually, I train with CTI, the Coactive Training Institute, which is, I would say, very holistic. It's focused on the whole person. Funny enough, maybe escaping from the world of clear goals, accomplishment, very driven people that I was surrounded with. This coaching is more about really getting in touch with who you are at the deepest level, and then being coherent with who you are, and try to get to a life that is in sync with your values, with your, with who you really are, as opposed to a life that's not in sync with that. So I guess, so, yeah, there are some coaching styles that is about, okay, which one, what do you want to accomplish? Let's do the 12 steps, and every week we move forward. This is more about self-knowledge. And then, yes, do take action. There's always an action component to that, but it's an action about how can I be the better me, as opposed to the better, the better me that is expected by some other people, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of like it being all about drive, it's sort of more, I love the notion of this like holistic approach. So you're aligned with your values, but you're also like taking care of your own wellness and perhaps your spiritual fulfillment and all of that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I would imagine with that, there is like that whole wellness component, and you're so into nutrition and stuff yourself, right? Do you like to cook?
That's yeah, of course. That's another one of those areas of interest. I like to cook. My wife likes to cook. My two daughters, we actually taught them how to cook when they were like 4 and 5 years old.
Yay.
We just let them play in the kitchen, and they are both amazing right now. They're just they learned, they explored, they made messes, and I've been aware of how our health is so critical to performance and to being fine. So I began to, I've always done some sort of physical activity, but I began to study a little bit about how nutrition can actually help you be better, about weight management, for example. I love the concept of intermittent fasting because
I was going to ask you about that. Talk about that.
Because it has that component of discipline that I guess goes along with the cold showers and with studying and things like that. Intermittent fasting not only is good because it is a strategy of weight management. You're not in a diet per se. You're not in calorie restriction. You're not cutting food off of your system. You're just restricting the time in which you consume your foods. But it brings a bunch of other benefits to your life. Autophagy is one of them, which is it actually activates the cleaning mechanisms of your cells. So, for example, everybody has precancerous cells. Autophagy actually detects them and gets rid of them because when our bodies are in a fasting state, it's like a semi-alarm that gets triggered that says, get ready for, tough times, and let's go back to basics. And going back to basics is get rid of all the weak cells that you have in your body and get as strong as possible to, fight whatever comes. And there's a bunch of other benefits that come from intermittent fasting. Insulin levels just get stable, and it is really a healthy way to live, and it's been documented in a zillion papers. It's very scientific, and it's actually you see it in all cultures for thousands of years. Pretty much every religion has a fasting component to it. So I love it because it brings you very, very concrete physical benefits, but it also has a discipline component that's always great to have.
Yeah, that's why you love it. That makes sense. I had a lot of luck actually with intermittent fasting, and I was surprised at how much energy I had at the same time, because I think maybe intuitively would not think that would be the case. But I have some blood sugar issues, so I need a little bit more guidance on how to do it properly so that I'm not having like a crash in the middle of the afternoon. But for a while it worked for me really well. And I just think that's absolutely a component of wellness. And so overall lifestyle design, and as a coach, the fact that you can speak to all of those topics, I think would make you a really good coach. So, so you're actually very well suited for this job. Is there anything more that you want to say about the coaching before you give us the details about how to find you online and whatnot?
Well, coaching is just a way of having impact. And I think everybody can benefit from coaching. We're all, it's like life is a game. And if you want to play your game at the best possible level, a coach can always benefit you. The top players in all sports have coaches, and they're great. And the thing about coaching is not a remedial activity. It's actually a way to really take you to the next level, to really get you to be as good as you want in anything you want. So that's why coaching energizes me so much. It's about taking people to their full potential.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, Hugh Jackman, who's like world famous and a triple threat, has a life coach. So I think that right there is sort of a testament to how everybody can benefit from having one. So that's great. So tell my audience where they can find you and learn more about your coaching and discover more about you.
Jorge Giraldo coaching.com. That's it. It's my site. You can find me on LinkedIn easily. Again, I guess.
No socials though.
No, not now. No.
Good. I so wish I didn't have to have any. I feel like it's part of something that I have to do, but it's painful. It's like pulling teeth, so I admire your approach for sure. Well, thank you. This was amazing. This was such a fun conversation. I knew it would be, and I didn't have to do a lot of prep for it because I was like, just going to let him talk because he's fascinating. It's going to be a good one. So
yeah, it's been fun.
Fun. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I, look forward to connecting with you further and seeing what you're up to. And I wish you the best weekend and all that good stuff. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. You too. All right. Take care.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
So guys, I hope that was as fun for you as it was for me. I legit want to be Jorge when I grow up, and I adore how he makes it seem not only okay, but downright normal to reinvent yourself every few years. Cheers to more people normalizing something that we everything enthusiasts cannot help but do. Quick reminder, if you haven't subscribed, hit that button so you can catch next week's episode that will make a superb follow-up to this one, since it's all about lifestyle design for people who like to love and lead their passions, aka the sequential everything enthusiasts of the world. And if you wouldn't mind leaving me the quickest little review, I'd be ever so grateful. You guys can also connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at Your Creative Fairy Godmother. And as always, thank you for hanging out with me, and I cannot wait to speak to you in the next episode. Take care.